Trae Young has just debuted the Trae Unlimited in the 2023 NBA playoffs, and after getting them on my foot and in hand, you know, I gotta say, they are a pretty good matchup for Trae and people that play like him, especially with some of the things that he likes to do on court, even maybe better than the Trae Young too. So let's get into them. Now, it's pretty safe to say that Trae Young is really the only one that can do the things that Trae Young does on court. You know, his presence of mind, his balance, and just kind of his basketball acumen, knowing where he is in space at all times, and the distance from the hoop to him, and kind of all the geometry that's going through his head, you know, a million miles an hour. Just a lot of people just can't reproduce that. And similarly, the Trae Young 2 kind of matches up with that game style. It is a shoe that allows just wicked degrees of freedom, and a shoe that Adidas made that I think they pride themselves on. That players that are putting those on and players that are buying the Trae Young 2 are players that can bring all of those tools to the table, and that shoe just kind of allows them to do all of that, versus in the Trae Unlimited where, you know, it's a little bit more of a traditional basketball shoe, but it offers some of the same characteristics and honestly some better characteristics to it, and a lot of that has to do just in the uppers. And the first thing about those uppers that just kind of hits you in the face is that these are not a slipper tongue shoe. This is a traditional three-piece tongue shoe, and a very thick and dense padded shoe at that. The tongue really has a ton of padding. The heel counter is really padded, really nice. But the thing that I found was really interesting is that these come with a runner's knot already built in. They have an outrigger eyelet on the eyelet previous to the most proximal one in your ankle, right? So it's the second to last eyelet. And what that does is it sucks down this whole undercarriage of the ankle collar. And that is great for someone who wears a brace like Trae Young is wearing right now. So that thing is one of the big reasons he's wearing them, is because these will fit a brace so much easier than the Trae Young 2. And they'll keep that brace a little bit more stable. The one thing you got to watch out for is because there is so much padding and because the lace eyelets are so wide set apart, they do take quite a bit of break-in before they lose their memory. Because when I was first tying them down, it was so hard to get them to stay tied. I almost wanted to put a pair of bubble laces in there just so it would kind of stay tied down. So you do have to kind of break these in a little bit in the lace eyelets. Once they do, then they hold their tension, but there is a lot of memory in there. And just looking at the uppers as a whole, this is a 2-layer braided mesh. One is more of a honeycomb than the one underneath of it is a little bit more linear. You do get some almost suture tape here in the proximal forefoot, just these kind of bands that go across there. Give it a little bit more pivoting power, a little bit more security there in the forefoot, which I'm personally a huge fan of. Plus, when you get into the midfoot of the shoe, you do get 2 really nice panels that sew all the way up in to the ankle collar. So there is a lot of paneling and a ton of security for side-to-side containment. These things are a very nice containing shoe, especially because they also kind of sit a little bit flat and lower to the ground, which we'll talk about in a minute. However, the one sacrifice you make for all of that isn't its breathability. If you look at the breathability test, he's heated up 140.7 degrees, cooled down 60.3. Definitely not the most breathable shoes out there. When I had my hand around the shoe and I do that, couldn't really feel the air coming out of anywhere, but the materials were starting to heat up pretty good. However, that breathability profile actually might not be the biggest thing in the world, because these are really meant to be played more indoors on hardwood rubberized courts, just because of the general makeup of the upper materials. Now, on the new upper durability test that I'm just doing today on the asphalt, like 10 seconds, I actually have had quite a bit of this shoe come off while I'm just doing these shimmy steps. So, you know, on the indoor courts, which I didn't have the camera with me, they were fine. I mean, no breakdown in the uppers at all. However, on these outdoor courts with any grit in them, you're gonna get really fast upper wear, especially if you get really low on your shimmy step or your hezzy steps. However, you just look at them with the burr, 10 seconds high grit sandpaper, kind of the same thing, just rips right through there. So indoors where the friction is lower, they're just fine. Outdoors, you better watch it. And getting into the midsole teardown, actually some more old school elements to these, both from Adidas basketball as well as Adidas tennis. That was nice to see. And speaking of teardowns, if you do want to start seeing the extended length teardowns all the way from start to finish, stem to stern, the whole teardown process with my kind of running commentary, making notes to myself, that is available in the membership section. All the shoes going forward, they're going to have extended length cuts of the teardown. It's about 5 minutes, just the whole process of me cutting the shoe open and kind of discovering all the things in real time with commentary. A lot of the things that, you know, maybe just are a little bit too long-winded for these videos, but like I said, if you are a real sneaker nerd, sneakerhead like I am, you'll probably really enjoy just kind of seeing the shoe for the first time, and these do come out early, so right now this video is already out on the member side. So if you do want to check that out, I'll leave a link to the member section down below. But speaking of things down below, if you look what's underneath your foot, it is an entire bed of adidas Bounce foam, which I'm personally a pretty big fan of. It looks like there should be 2 layers of it. However, this is just dye, so it is just one big layer of Bounce foam. Remember, Bounce foam is EVA, but it's a very specifically tuned EVA. Remember, they use the same technology they use to inspect the hulls of the space shuttle to make this EVA, to make it more dense in areas it needs to be and less dense in areas you want that as well. Now on the single leg jump height test, I got 19 centimeters in these, which was a real shock because when you're on the court on these, on outdoor courts, they do not feel very lively. They're much more of a ground attack type shoe. However, because the shank is pretty long, you are getting a little bit of cantilevering, and because they have a nice wide base, I'm not wobbling doing the single leg jump height test. There are some running shoes out there with a ton of Zoom X foam in them or carbon fiber plates, things like that, where the single leg jump test, I'm really having to center myself and then get up off the ground, and that really takes down those height readings, whereas in a shoe like this where it's ultra stable, I can get such a good push and jump on them because I'm not afraid of kind of tilting one way or the other. But conversely, if you look at the bounce height test, 32.5 centimeters in the heel and then 30 centimeters in the forefoot. Now what that tells me is there's a little bit of a disconnect between the bounciness of the foam and just the profile of the shoe in general that allows you to kind of get up off the ground. It also has implications again for what surfaces these are best on and what players they are best for, which we'll get to in the playability section. And getting into the outsole tread, I actually really like this design. It's more of a flowering design. It goes from a herringbone in the heel, then it flowers out here into the forefoot into more of radial patterns. Now it has one big air channel going all the way through the shoe, which gives these not only a lot of stability just because of the shape of the shoe, but also a little bit more movement, a little more ease of movement because you get that break point in the middle of the shoe, allows the shoe to flex a little bit and move with your foot a little bit more, which I do really like. Now, if you look at the speed ratio on these, they only got 1.9, and that kind of correlated to me, especially like I said, on the outdoor courts. These things just don't pick up and go as fast because like I said, the profile of them is a little bit more flat to the ground, continuous tread pattern. They're a little bit more bottom heavy of a shoe. However, in terms of cornering and in terms of grip on these, they are fantastic. So if you're looking for creative speed or speed in a small contained area or quick shifty movement, that's a completely different story on these. And speaking of that profile, if you look at the outsole durability test, 10-second highest grit sandpaper, and you are getting a millimeter of damage here on a 2mm tread depth. The durometer is only 13.7 on these, but once again, I think if you're keeping them on an indoor hardwood court, that's more of an asset because once this rubber is warmed up a little bit, I'd say it maybe takes, 2-3 minutes of warming, and then the profile becomes very nice, very forgiving, but with enough grip. I think really anything indoors, they're gonna do really well and they're gonna last a lot longer. However, on an outdoor court, just like in the uppers, you can kind of see where they're just really all scuffed up pretty much everywhere, even on the outsole tread. So I'd say if you're gonna be getting them on outdoors, just make sure you're not a slider or a dragger, you're not too hard on your shoes. If you have pretty light footwork, you're okay, or to shoot around, they're fine. But for playing really hard, keep them on hardwood, rubberized, or carpet. But getting into the fit of the Trae Unlimiteds, I think this is one of the bigger reasons why he's playing in them right now and why I think they're such a good fit for him. Number one, like I said, a really nice and forgiving profile in the forefoot of the shoe, like a lot of other Adidas shoes, and they're a medium wide width foot. You can just go true to size. I even think with a narrow foot, if you want like a super performance fit, something that can really be super nimble for you, you can just go down a half size, but true to size is fine for everybody. Number two, in terms of the snake bitten foot, I really would probably be putting an orthotic in these just because that bounce foam with that really long shank is not the most forgiving thing underfoot. On hardwood courts, I didn't really notice it. They felt really nice. I feel like they can give you a little bit more pop on a hardwood court that might be a little bit warped or just not as lively. However, on outdoor asphalt, I could tell in my legs and my knees that these just weren't as plush, that they weren't as forgiving. So I think outdoor courts wear them, just put an orthotic in them. On indoor courts, the profile is a lot easier, but in terms of instability or for a sprainer, they are so containing and they are so stable that these are a tremendous pickup for that. Much better than the Trae Young 2 versus just that knit kind of elastic upper that can allow you to go any which way you want, which is a feature, not a bug for a lot of people. But if you got the instability or wearing a brace, these are definitely the way to go versus the 2s. And getting into the all-important playability of the Trae Unlimiteds, the thing that I noticed the most about these is just how stable they are on the ground. I noticed when I was trying to pivot, kind of change directions or get my own rebounds, I found these were very, very stable. Even when I was running in one direction and trying to change speed, trying to change direction, I was still able to keep my balance very well. I had no thoughts about rolling my ankle or anything like that. Like I said, I don't really think they get up off the ground so easy, but for someone like Trae Young who can just do it on his own, these offer such a superior ground game that I think they make up for a lot of those issues, especially on indoor hardwood, where you can get a little bit more stability and just a little bit more cutting force when you're trying to outwork somebody with footwork or trying to get that really quick step back. I found for those types of moves, when you're trying to plant and get back really quick, that's when these really started to come to life. And like I said, for someone like Trae who can just create and create so well, these shoes allow a lot of that just because of the stability they provide. Now, they don't provide the same range of motion, like I said, or degrees of freedom that the Trae Young 2 do. The outsole tread isn't as ergonomic and biomechanic to the foot. You're not going to get those crazy rolling actions like you do in the Trae Young 2. However, this is a more stable tread, and for someone that wants to play a very aggressive ground game, I think these are really good pickups, like I said, especially for indoor hardwood. And of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially because Adidas recently has just been coming to play. I mean, the last couple releases they've put out, I've really liked them all. I mean, the Trae Unlimited is no exception. The adidas Selects were just tremendous. I really feel like they're kind of getting back to their roots a little bit with basketball and kind of what they do best, and I'm really loving to see it. I really hope they keep coming out with all these winners, because every shoe that's been coming out from them recently, I think, really fits a certain player, a certain style really well, and they aren't getting super, super expensive either. You know, they're all kind of staying in kind of a similar range in price, which I like too. So I'd love to hear your thoughts down below and kind of which one you're picking up, if any. And if you want to see the big cousin to the adidas Trae Unlimited, the adidas adidas Select, one of my favorite rubber compounds of the year, it's such a cool tread and grip profile, make sure you click in this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you in the next one.